Hello, I'm Vicki James of Beyond the Line Books and Thrive Hive, where we're spending 21 weeks talking about things that are needed in order. It's like I still have a little laggy connected a wire. So let's just hope for the best on this one. All right. And we started off kind of talking about clarity and foundation of our business. Things is like, why are we building a business and what should I offer and how do I all those kinds of great things. Now we're moving on to, last week we talked about our booking system and taking payments, and today we're talking about the sale, but in a way that's not scary. And as we get into the material, that'll make a lot of sense. Kind of the cliff tail is like, what you think of when you think of sales doesn't work much of the time. So we're going to explore kind of a different way that might set a little bit better for you and take some of the apprehension out of doing sales calls out of the way. So that is the whole point. All right, and then just some reminders. There are some resources in the description for you that includes this workbook that I'm about to pull up, which, by the way, this might be a workbook you really want because Patrick's going to cover some stuff with us, and this might be something you want to have on your virtual shelf in order to go look at. All right, and then we also have, the workbook, more on Thrive Hive, and then we have a new assessment out, so you can kind of see, what you know versus what maybe is a little bit of a mystery. So lots of resources out there for you. And then before we go too far, let's want to talk about commenting. So hopefully I'm unfrozen now. I did see that I froze for a second, but hopefully we're back. If not, I'll be redoing this video and just pushing it out a different way. Anyways, so commenting is great. So I love it when you guys are commenting to me, when you're commenting to each other. Would love to hear who's in the room, what you're building, where you're joining us from. By the way, I'm in Valencia, Spain myself, just to give you a little information there. And I was last week too, so I don't think it's the distance that's causing the issues today. That's probably something else. Might be my internet provider. I'm not sure. But we're going to keep on going because the show must go on. Anyways, yes, please do connect with each other and let's build community together, because when we have community, we have additional perspectives, and with additional perspectives, we get information and ideas faster. And the whole thing we want to do is to get to more clients and more money faster. And I honestly believe, and I've seen for myself, that happens when I lean into the wisdom and the experience of others. So that's what we are all about here. All right. So with that, let me go ahead and pull our little book up here. And I just lost my page again. All right. So start selling. What really works? And there's been a few different titles for this. In a similar presentation, we have one taking the ick factor out of it. I don't think it's what we called it, but it's really about like how can we sell in a way that works for the buyer, but is also more gentle for us. And so really what we're looking at is how to make sales not so heavy. And I believe the reason it feels heavy is because it's what we see on a regular basis, the hard pitch, the knocking on doors, the foot in the doorway, all of those kinds of things. But what we're talking about today is a very different approach, because when we think through when people sell like that to us, it doesn't work on us. So maybe there's a better way. Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. So with that, we'll start with kind of a little bit more about like what doesn't work. And I think one way to think about it, I'm sure everybody in this room, maybe today, this week, this month, this year, has had somebody, pitch to you, whether it is a DM on your LinkedIn, hey, I saw your profile and we can, get your SEO up, or whatever it may be, the emails, or even get on a networking call and they just start hammering on, here's my thing that will make your life better, but they don't even know how your life is today. So how are they going to make it better? And so what doesn't work, and I think if you think back to your own experience talking to other people doing sales, is the hard pitch. So that's what I really wanted to start with, because that hard pitch, unless it's like a silver unicorn of I happen to have been looking for somebody that could give me X, and then the hard pitch was that person, and somehow I know, like, and trust them, then that might work, but otherwise it won't. And when you see people using those kind of tactics, what's really happening is they're going for numbers. So that DM you got, they probably sent it to 1,000 people, hoping that, 20 they can get to a next step with. So this approach, you're not going to hit as many people, but the people you talk to, it's going to be such better quality conversations, and they're going to convert sooner. And so you're going to get to the same end result of those sales that you need in a way that feels gentle, useful, supportive, versus that kind of icky, like, oh, I don't want to talk about my thing. So that's what we're here for today. And with that, what actually works, and we're going to hear from Patrick in just a second on this. So he graciously recorded a video for us. So hopefully the tech is working and the video comes through, as I hope it does. But what does work is to have real conversations, to learn about your buyer, to understand what your buyer's problems are, and see how you might be able to help solve them. And then taking it through a conversation where you're kind of going down this road together, so that you're offering support and not pitching a solution that probably isn't even what they need, want, or desire at this point. So with that, I'm going to put Patrick up on stage.
Oh, Thrive Hive Live viewers. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you. My name is Patrick Seaton, and I'm honored that Vicki has invited me in to talk to you about some concepts. So in the Thrive Hive Live, we are in this part in the session about selling, and specifically that all starts with our first meetings, first interactions, first calls, whatever that might be. So let me give you a little bit of background. I want to talk to you about two different frameworks that will help you when you are going into that first interaction. And the frameworks come from, I'll reach for it, but after working with a client for 9 years on sales and studying neuroscience, I wrote this book, A Crocodile Brain Can Make or Break Your Sale. The process and science for guiding organizations to buy from you. Now, organizations, it can be a person, it can be B2C, it's B2B. The ideas that I want to share with you today are in the book, and they really help start your entire journey with a potential client. It starts it off really well. So the two frameworks that I want to talk to you about are called HEC, hack, and PIM, PIM. And you're probably thinking, what the heck is he talking about? Haha, that was a little joke. But heck, let's start with heck. So heck stands for humility, empathy, and curiosity. Now, it's very important for us when we're going into a discovery call, exploratory call, whatever you call it, to focus on what is important to that prospect. I don't know about you, I've never seen people just standing around saying, hey, I got some money, and the first person who tells me something, I'm going to buy it. They buy things because they want to solve problems. And in the book, me and the co-author, we talk about and explain a process that we call the PSSP. I love acronyms, if you can't tell. And PSSP stands for the Problem Solving Sales Process. So how do you walk people through their problem solving journey, which is their buying journey? And this ties into heck, humility. The first thing we need to do when we go into a first call is not think that we know everything. We don't know their business. We don't know what they're going through. So we have to go in with humility that I'm not the smartest person in the room on their business. Empathy. We need to listen to them. People want talk about what their challenges are. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like they have a safe space that they can share. And that requires empathy on our part. And curiosity. Curiosity is asking questions. The goal of a first interaction is not to sell, in my opinion. You are not there to sell. You are there to understand. Because the first stage of the PSSP is called classification. And this is where you're at. Classification. I'm trying to classify this prospect as target or not target today. So that means if they're target today, then I can keep talking to them with future conversations. If they're not target today, or maybe never, then great. I'm not going to keep having conversations with them because that means I just have a coffee clutch friend, but I don't need that and they don't need that. So curiosity is all about the questions that we're asking to understand their situation. So HEC, humility and empathy and curiosity, which leads us into the PIM. So that is the way that we measure a good first interaction, exploratory meeting, a discovery call, whatever you want to, whatever you call it. But most of the time we come out of those calls saying, wow, that was a great call. They seemed really interested. They asked me for pricing. Well, I'm going to give you this. The PIM is there to understand a different way to measure that's more tangible. So P stands for problems. Does this prospect have problems that I can solve? Now, problems could be problems, concerns, issues, keeps me up at night, frustrations, whatever it is, but let's just keep it in the P for problems. Do they have problems that I can solve? That's where you use the questions to figure out, well, these are the problems I solve. What do you have? Do any of these concern you? So we have to get them talking. And if they talk about the problems that I can solve, okay, great. The P. The I is interest. Are they interested in talking about potentially solving said problems? That's the next step. And the M is moment. Is right now the moment that they want to continue talking about potentially solving these problems? Notice I didn't say seller or they're buying. We're just, do we have a reason to have another discussion tomorrow or next week? That is the moment. So the PIM, you can walk out saying, I understand that they have this, and this as problems. They have expressed interest, and they have said, yes, right now I want to, and let's set up another meeting, let's go. That is a way to measure your first interaction, your first discovery call. Now, I'm going to add one more thing in here before ending the video. Very often we feel the interest. Because they say, oh, you know what? This sounds really interesting, Patrick. Could you send me some pricing and information? That to us says, oh my gosh, I've got a hot one. They want to buy tomorrow, potentially. Maybe we don't react that overly much react. But let's think about what's going on in the buyer's head. When you are in a buying position and this isn't across the board, but there is a possibility that this is what's going on. When you are the buyer and you really don't want that service and you're not interested and you don't want to be rude and say, thanks, but this isn't for me, what's the fastest way to close down that meeting, that call, and get rid of that salesperson? The answer is I feign interest and I ask for information or a quote. And the salesperson jumps up and runs out of the call, runs out of the meeting, and prepares all this stuff for me that I'm never going to read. Why do I do that? That's my survival brain in motion. I'm saying, I do not want this, but I don't want to be rude. I just need to get out of this. I need survival tactics. So I say what they want to hear, and they will go. Now, what's the result if I really wasn't interested, but they send me information? I don't use it. I'm going to ghost them. I have no intention of talking to them. What happens on the seller side? I got a hot one. I'm going to keep following up. They asked me for a quote. They must be interested. So we are at two different points between the buyer and the seller. And that's what the PIM helps to avoid, that ghosting that we have all experienced. And it will help you to quantify and make it more tangible. Do I really have a potential prospect here? So to wrap this up, you have the HEC, the HEC, humility, empathy, curiosity. Curiosity leads to problems, exploring, let them talk, interest, moment, and with that, you will have a better first meeting, first interaction. And with that, I thank you. Thank you, Vicki, for letting me participate in the Thrive Hive Live, and I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point, Patrick Seaton, and LinkedIn. And if you are curious, again, you can go find the book on Amazon. And I also have this built into a tool that I've created, which is called Ask Alex, and it is a sales thought partner for people who struggle with selling but need to sell. So with that, I will say thank you for your time and have a great day.
All right. And I will say thank you, Patrick. What a great explanation for HEC and PIM. I will pull our workbook back up and we'll dig in just a little bit on it. We won't spend too much time. He did such a great job explaining, but I did want to kind of walk through our book just a smidgen. And I wanted to start with a story and kind of what happened for me once I started using humility, empathy, and curiosity in my sales calls. It became a gift to be like, oh, I can focus on the other person. Oh, I can have a genuine conversation. Like the apprehension of like, here's my questions and here's my, like, all that just disappeared. And I showed up ready to learn what was going on with them. I discovered that, maybe they weren't a sale, maybe they were a potential referral partner or collaboration partner, or maybe they had some, tips they could give me because they've been in business longer. And so it really became, instead of sales calls, like, let's just have a conversation and see where this goes. And that felt so much better, so much better than, getting all worked up like, okay, do I have all my points and am I going to get through them? And it was just a huge difference. And so I realized at some point, it's like, I just started showing up for conversations. And when PIM naturally emerged, then it turned into, okay, let's talk about how I can help you through this problem. And one of the things I want to talk about, and something I'm still working on, is especially with curiosity or understanding interest in moment, it takes a lot of probing questions too, which is a skill that I have to work on. But understanding it's like, oh, well, how is that problem kind of affecting your day to day? And what would success look like? And, kind of guiding them through that. So it's a learned skill, but it's still a lot less pressure, a lot less stressful, and a lot easier for moving forward and having a natural conversation. So that's my story there. But I wanted you to think about to your own, looking at things, within the workbook, we always have these prompts on, okay, well, what kind of question could you ask, or how could you approach this with humility or empathy and curiosity? So I'm kind of curious on if you can think of a statement or a question that would help put the frame of HEC into the conversation to move it forward with that openness in mind, with that I'm not pitching my sale. Instead, I'm sitting back and I'm learning what the top possibilities are. So really curious if there's anything that comes to mind for you to really get into that HEC mindset. And then as you're thinking about that, I would tell you something else that happened, because as my business evolved, my offers evolved. And there was one case in particular where I got on a sales call and I thought she was a great Thrive Hive person, brand new launching her business, like let's get her in Thrive Hive. And I used Heck. And what happened is that's not what was on her mind. Her business books were on her mind. And I also offer bookkeeping services. So by the end of the call, it was like, oh, she doesn't want Thrive Hive, she wants books. So we were able to book a next call to talk about, okay, let's get into the bookkeeping and how we can support, how I can support her there. You know, what problem, you know, and we'll, you know, she identified the problem of, you know, being unsure about how to manage her books, especially in Portland where taxes are a little bit different. And she's very interested in getting in front of it, of not falling behind and being kind of left to the dust and with messy books. And she, you know, the moment was now. And so we were able to book that call. Now, if I had went in with like, okay, you join Thrive Hive, we are a community of people just like you who've gone before, and we sort of like, she wasn't ready to hear that. That wasn't the problem of interest to her at that time. And I would have had no next conversation. It would have been lost. So that's just, you know, one example of how these frameworks really work. All right. So yeah, humility, which is, you know, for me, humility, I kind of learned to approach it as like, but what if I'm wrong? Like, what if I don't understand their problem? Or what if my solution doesn't really fit? Like, how do I open up my mind to understand that that's a true fit? And then the empathy is just, you know, really, you know, taking the focus off me and putting the focus on them. Just as when you're having a conversation, if the person's all about their thing, their whatever, then, you know, it's more about self and it's not, and we need to make it about our buyer. That's what it's all about. And then that curiosity, you know, being truly curious on where they are, what success would look like, what they've tried, whatever it is. And then when I used to talk about Heck, I would say compassion. So I'd say C kind of has a double-edged sword. It can be compassion too. So how are we compassionate about where they are? All right. And then moving on to PIM, you know, really, you know, Patrick said it so well, understanding that problem. So what are they trying to solve? You know, what is getting in their way? How is it affecting their life? And as you start digging in, asking those questions, then you'll learn more. The interest will start to come out. You'll understand what their moment is. And so this is really the opportunity to kind of get into that mindset of the sale. Now, you may find out again that, wow, they don't have a problem I could solve, or they're not interested in solving it. You know, Patrick brought up the coffee clutch partner. Actually, I don't mind some of those in my life. But typically I find most conversations that I have fall into one of four categories. One is a potential collaboration partner. One is a referral partner. That's probably the biggest bucket in my world. Somebody I can make a sales to, probably not now. Somebody I can keep that door open and learn more, continue to approach them with humility, empathy, and curiosity, continue to look for a signal of problem, interest, and moment. And then I know when's the right time to kind of drop the, oh, you know, I think my thing will help exactly what you're talking about. How do you want more information? How do you want it? Can we give a call? And really opening that up. And so what I found also is when I was really fully bought into this, and it was the same time I mentioned the person in Portland who I thought was going to be Thrive Hive, but she wanted bookkeeping. I actually had three calls in a row say, yeah, I want to go to the next steps. Like you understand my problem. You clearly have something that can help solve it. Like, let's take this to the next steps. And that was the moment that I went, you know what? I'm done with sales calls. I'm just going to show up and have conversations. And when I am actively understanding their problem, their interest, and their moment, then I can decide what I can offer them. And maybe it's not something I offer. Maybe it's a referral to somebody else. And that's fine too. And so it's like, how can I support this person is really the big thing. And when all the stars align and I can support them with either Thrive Hive or bookkeeping, then, you know, that's a great day. All right. So I would say in all of that, there's really two tricks that I have to lean into. And one is listen more than I talk. If I'm doing all the talking, then there's no humility, empathy, or curiosity there. And if I'm doing all the talking, they're not going to have an opportunity to state what their problem, their interest, their moment is. And so it's really, you know, gleaning, getting them to open up about what's going on, which takes me to the second one. And I already talked about this, is asking those questions. And again, I'm still working on that one. I have a hard time. I'm always like, I'm a problem solver. I spent 25 years in corporate IT. But what I learned in corporate IT does not help me selling to small business owners today. And so that's something that I've worked on. And I'll mention too, I think I'll go ahead and jump over to our resources before we cut this down. And Patrick mentioned both of his resources. So the science behind HEC and PIM are in the book here. So you can go check that out. It is more of a, I won't say a graphic novel, but it's not text dense. It's more storytelling. And again, a book about crocodile brain, which basically means trigger, is going to be the opposite as you engage with it. And then Ask Alex is the AI tool that works with Claude that has really helped me refine my approach to how I open up my mind, close my mouth, and learn more about people as I go through these conversations. So those are out there. So I'd say we're right at our 30-minute mark, which seems to be our little sweet spot for getting through these, even though I did get a few minutes late start with some Wi-Fi issues at the beginning. Thank you for your patience and holding out there. I'd say if you're not connected with Patrick already, go ahead and connect with him. And just a reminder that Thrive Hive is about community where we can all share our stories, share our experience, share our resources. And so if you think some community with knowledge, resources, and other support is something that can help you in your business journey, please join us. 45 days free. And there is a link in the description, as well as a little assessment so you can figure out what maybe you don't know about building a business yet, where you might need more resources down the road. And then finally, next week, we're going to combine two steps, 12 and 13. So 12 is separating your business and personal finances, and 13 is getting started with managing those business finances. So we're going to put those together next week. Hopefully you'll show up and learn more about keeping those finances separate. And really, it's about having the data you need to make decisions about your business, because I always use the analogy of know your numbers. That used to be a PSA for knowing your cholesterol and other health indicators. And so it's really like, how can we know what's happening with the business so that we're making the right decisions for our business? And just some lightweight options, not as scary as you might be concerned about. So I definitely have an approach that is meant for the solopreneur just getting started out that can't hire a big ticket accountant to help them. We'll just talk about what some of your options are and what the value that you get out of it. So hope to see you next week when we combine steps 12 and 13. So thank you for joining. Thank you again, Patrick, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.